I had the pleasure of speaking with author and theologian Theodore Nottingham. He wrote this book called The Path of Inner Transformation, The Essential Fourth Way Teachings. He has a YouTube as well. I'll link that at the bottom. Basically, we discussed Gurdjieff, who developed the fourth way. That's actually him on the cover right there, Gurdjieff. Famous philosopher. He had this concept of the unconscious, sleeping people. We refer to them as NPCs. Theodore Nottingham, Ted Nottingham, never heard the term before because he's an adult. Anyway, we discussed this concept and what it really means for us, especially in the modern time. Have you ever heard the term NPC?
I don't think so.
Non-player character?
No.
It's a thing that goes on right now where people with the people online will accuse others of being NPCs, and they're the background characters in video games. And so it's basically like people will accuse others of not having a soul or not being a character and just being the background. And that's the term. I think it's derogatory because I think that we can't know anyone's inner mind, and maybe they seem like they're going along and just going through their day to day, but really they have something more meaningful back there, and they have a great home life. So I don't like the term NPC, but it's very popular right now. So I wonder if you could speak on that, this idea that there are non-player characters out there, and if these non-player characters could they earn a soul if they just decided to go and find something and then earn that soul?
Okay. So let me say first of all that the idea that you're not born with a soul, have to create one, you say earn one, but it's really creating one, is seriously outside the Christian mindset. Okay. So this is Gurdjieff at his most renegade, rascal, if you will, really breaking all the rules. However, here's his point. If one does not develop a conscious willpower to be more than one's reactivity, one's ego, then at a psycho-spiritual chemical level, something is not created to live on beyond death because we have simply immersed ourselves in the senses, reacting to the stimulus around us, and have not developed an individuation, as Jung talks about, a conscious center that is separate from the more, what shall we say, earthy aspects of our nature. I'm hungry, I eat, I go to bed, that's it, then I die.
Mm.
Then there's also self-transcendence that knows to feed the body, but it is not just the body's needs, it is something more. And people are meant to find that naturally, if you will. A mother's love, for instance, authentically experienced is transformational for a young woman, into ultimately a wise woman, you know. And suffering leads us to breaking out of our natural narcissism and 2-year-old, self-absorption to become that nobility of character that is our potential as human beings. And so that the creation of a soul is the creation of a transcendent sense of self that is not merely the fragmentation of passing emotion and thought that just dissipates at the end.
Mm.
I would argue that Gurdjieff may be mistaken somewhere there, I dare say, because it's bigger than that. Our Creator loves our individuality. We are, even in our failures, beloved creatures. And we may well have another chance in another realm and another life, who knows? However, in this life, which is what matters, of course, right here and now, that being present to our existence is creating soul, right? Living this moment fully in appreciation and gratitude is living our existence. Running around worried about what you have to do next, or what you didn't do in the past, or this coffee got spilled, is missing one's life. So once we begin to be able to name what is happening to us, how we are pulled out of ourselves through identification, as the fourth way calls it, we can begin to get clarity and to wake up to this fact. And then,
Mm.
as is taught in all traditions, to find that presence, that mindfulness, that consciousness that unites us, makes us one. And this is one of the key things of the fourth way. We are not one, we are many, as Yeshua himself has said, right? We are legion. Because one thought, one part of us wants to do this, the other part wants to do the opposite, and never the twain shall meet. And the idea is to develop a unity that is beyond that, that can make the choice intentionally and consciously. Choose the higher. Then you are creating a self, a soul. That's the meaning behind that idea.
Yes. I think it's very, very hard for people growing up now to do that because when I was growing up, we didn't have the phone all the time. We had the other technology, we had the internet. We didn't have a phone in our pocket, when we were 10 years old. And right now, even on TV, it's always asking you to consume something. It's to consume food, consume clothes. But now you also have to consume content on your phone. And I think it's very hard for people to put it down and stop consuming what the world is feeding you and just to stop for a second and say, well, can I create? Or even if I don't create, can I just be without consuming anything? Maybe you consume air. That's fine. You can consume air. But other than that, can I just be? I don't want to go out to, I don't know, Dairy Queen or whatever the commercial is for right now. I don't want to watch more TV. I just want to be. I think the cards are stacked against people, especially a person being born right now. I think the cards are really stacked against them to find their self or to create it.
I would fully agree with you on that, and I'd go further and quote someone not well known in our time, Carl Friedrich Durkheim, the father of transpersonal psychology. I've translated some of his books. One of them is The Path of Initiation, and this is a trans-traditional way of awakening to the greater life, okay? And he makes the point that in the 60s, in that generation of your mother's, of my own, when all of this knowledge was coming forth, Tibetan Book of the Dead for the first time out of the Himalayas, in New York City, you can find it, this amazing Niagara Falls of new knowledge coming to the West. So with it came drugs.
Mm.
Almost as though a dark force was engaged in being an obstacle to the potential that was being made available. So, if we were to consider that metaphysically with what you just said, you are absolutely right. The magnificence of our technology, which allows you and I to be speaking right now, to have encountered each other, allows me to do what I do across the world with individual seekers. Somebody out in Australia in the outback, who has no capacity to deal with the Gurdjieff ideas, but we can now. So much of that is a wonderful possibility, but the dark side is way bigger, of course, as it always is. And so this phone thing is an immediate loss of self, just as you're saying.
Mm.
You're just pulled out of yourself. You are no longer present. You're just eyeballs absorbed in what it is you're looking at. And it is shocking, for sure. It is almost becoming disabled from looking up at the trees and enjoying the breeze and the leaves for a moment. That frequency, that way of being, isn't even in the nervous system due to the shaping of the technology in us.
I don't know what people are gonna do. I mean, we just had a baby, so he's 15 months now. And so for him, obviously no phone, no tablet, but you see babies on tablets now. So I don't know. I don't know what 20 years is gonna bring. I honestly don't. I'm hoping for the best.
Okay. Well, perhaps there's a chance that there'll be a backlash. Like each generation seems to reject what the cutting edge of the previous generation went after, you know, and a recovery. Because just as that is occurring, I'll just give you just one example. Just as this catastrophe of the human psyche is taking place, so is Orthodox Christianity from the East, from the Middle East, from Eastern Europe, coming into American life. Right here where I am,
Hmm.
in a small town, there's an Orthodox church, which is not just an ethnic thing. In fact, it's not ethnic at all. It's Americans who have discovered something of the fourth century and entered a mystical relationship to reality that is inaccessible to the Protestant world. And
Mm.
this amazing sociological, spiritual development against all odds is happening even with the phones in the pockets and all the stimulus around us. There's a hunger because that the human soul is always going to hunger for home, for, my friends, the Gottmans in France, who are great teachers, call it a nostalgia. We have a deep
Mm.
nostalgia. And so it may well be that it is less likely to find 20 somethings who are intense seekers, as I knew in my time, as I was. It may be less, a culture may be less capable of producing that. And yet, there's this other mystery that spirit is reaching out, calling, is using what you and I are doing right now for somebody, even if it's one person, to resonate and to say, okay, I knew there was something else.
Gurdjieff used to say that unconscious people, those who hadn't woken up yet, were food for the moon. And it was such a great term, maybe dismissive of some people, but it was such an interesting term. I asked him about it. What does it mean to be food for the moon? And how can you avoid it? Because that doesn't sound very good. Can you explain that?
Sure, yes, that's very much a Gurdjieffian thing, okay? And to put it in the context of what Gurdjieff was saying in his sort of masterful cosmic view of things with lots of humor, so you can't always be sure where that's coming from. I'm referring now to his All and Everything, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, okay, which is almost unreadable. I did read it before I joined the school, but I had the time to absorb the 1,500 pages of it, page-long paragraphs with strange words, but the man's power and humor is phenomenal. So, in his view, wars and these times of insanity and negativity, negative energy, is something used by another dimension, another power,
Mm.
like nature, that has no interest in us as human beings. It's just using
Mm.
our life force, if you will. In this case, he would say to develop the moon, so that World War II ends up ultimately funneling an energy for a whole other purpose. It becomes compost for something else. And that
I see that.
idea, yeah, that idea can really, shift your perspective on things and also recognize the dangers of negativity and crowd madness and all of that. But food for the moon simply means total unconsciousness, living
Mm.
your life as a reactive mechanical creature. You saw some of the materials on body types that I put out there, which this
Yes.
school was particularly skilled in, made a real focus of study because we were like a laboratory for understanding these things. And so there was a high level of insight that's still to this day not known, really. It has not made its
Mm.
way to the surface, the body types, but it helps us. It's secondary, but it is useful information to fully grasp the reality of our mechanics and the need for a conscious mastery of self, which without this would just on automatic. And so food for the moon means that we end up, or to put it even worse, if you will, Gurdjieff would speak of dying like a dog, just completely losing our potential as human beings by failing to grasp what we're supposed to do here, which is to wake up and not just be pulled along by the nose by our ego and illusions and expectations and fears, fitting in.
It's yeah, I see what's happening now, and of course I have to do a lot of research for World War II just to do it, honestly. And it seems as though it's the personality of maybe one or two people. Like in the case of World War II, you have Hitler's personality, which dragged all these people in. And now we should know all this. We've researched World War II, front and back, we know all this, but somehow even conscious people are being dragged along this path, and I see it. I see it around us. We see in the last election, I don't think anybody wanted these candidates. But here we are, 330 million people, and we're stuck. And then they are going to have the decisions. They're going to make these decisions. These people nobody wanted. And depending on their decisions, then we will have to go along with it. And we saw that in World War II with Hitler, and that the German people at a certain point didn't want to go along with it, but they just didn't have the means to break out and to say no, and so they were destroyed. And the same thing with Stalin. We see the Bolshevik Revolution, how it was just a few people who were able to manipulate millions of people. And so now, since we have this technology, we're now watching in the Ukraine war, we're watching these poor Russian kids and Ukrainian kids who are themselves humans, but they have no choice but to be pulled along and then basically be food for whatever this larger thing is, this larger process is that seems to repeat every century or so, every 80 years or so. And whatever that is, you're right. It does not care about us. It doesn't care that Russian kid is his mother's only son, that she loved him unconditionally, and that, he spent Christmases with her. Doesn't care. It's just this process. And I've become a little bit cynical now, and I think that maybe this process will take us along no matter what we think, no matter how many videos I make, no matter how many books we write, the process will just drag us along and we'll end up as food for it.
Well, I would say there's a whole other history also of humanity. Just like in the Middle Ages, monasteries saved civilization. It went underground as the barbarism and savagery ran, the bloodlust and illnesses. And in every century, there is always those few, we might even say, the remnant, if you will. Those who are not part of it, who are called out, who even while everything is going in one direction, I think of Rumi in his ecstatic connection to the holy in the midst of all that was going on in his culture. Or Meister Eckhart, Hildegard von Bingen, people of the 14th century who were so unlike their times. So that the idea of in the world but not of it, come out from among them and be separate in the deepest spiritual sense. Gurdjieff, think for yourself, verify everything for yourself. Don't go with the crowd. The spiritual seeker is always an outsider.
I do not like the term NPC. It basically dismisses all of these people, maybe 90% of the population, and it's a way to just ignore them. It's not fair. I also feel that nearly anybody can develop their personality, can develop, I guess you could call it a soul, can develop it and can really work on it through suffering, through hard work, and through serious introspection. So if you're watching this video like, hey, people have used that term against me, I hate that term. Well, you can always get better. If you think of yourself as an NPC for some reason, you can always improve upon that. And if you're like, I'm an NPC and I like it, good for you. It must be nice to be an NPC. You don't have to worry about anything. So either way, don't feel insulted. If you want to take this journey and develop yourself more, I'm having some videos coming out soon to help you. But if you don't, and you're just like, I like the way I am and I just want to learn interesting things here or there, that's you. That's your journey. I actually met Ted Nottingham through my video on the Fellowship of Friends. If you have not seen that video yet, please check it out. I'll link it down below. He used to be a member of this cult when he was very, very young and left before things got insane. And he reached out to me and I was just so fascinated that a person who, when he was my age, was part of this cult is now this noted theologian, this author who you can see from his videos does a lot of great work. I was just intrigued. Let's say that. I was intrigued. So I'm going to link both of those videos down below. Thank you.